Hope you're ready for the craziest medical case I've shared yet, because the more you hear of this case, the creepier and creepier it gets. This is Gloria Ramirez, who has unfortunately been termed the toxic woman for the mysteries surrounding her death. In 1994, Gloria was 31 years old and was diagnosed with cervical cancer. Gloria was rushed to the hospital after her heart went into a fatal cardiac arrhythmia. Just before shocking her, though, the staff noticed that she was covered in a very strange oil. They described it as having a fruity, garlic-like smell. Then they noticed her blood had strange yellow particles in it. That's when this case took a bizarre turn, when the nurse who drew the blood suddenly passed out. She was then rushed out of the room, but one by one, more staff members began having facial burning, convulsions, and passing out. Sadly, Gloria died of this condition, but not before 23 of the staff members that cared for her became gravely ill, some spending weeks in the hospital and ICU. After a thorough autopsy, no chemicals were discovered in or on her, and it was eventually declared a mystery. This is not the end of the story, though. Part 2 has more information on what might have actually happened in this case. Gloria Ramirez is the source of one of the strangest medical mysteries in modern times. This is after her deceased body poisoned 23 hospital caregivers in California. More information is given in Part 1, but no cause or toxin was found on autopsy. As a result, these are the top theories as to what might have actually happened in this bizarre case. First, the California Health Department has officially deemed it some sort of mass hysteria event with no real medical cause. As an ER doctor, this seems like the least likely scenario, but is the official response. A doctor who took care of Gloria and then spent 2 weeks in the ICU is suing them for this explanation. A local lab theorized that the oil covering her may be DMSO gel she was using to treat her pain. The electric shock she received may have converted this to dimethyl sulfate, which is known to cause paralysis, delirium, and convulsions. This theory does require a number of chemical leaps, but the coroner's office later stated that this theory is possible. The third theory is the wildest, but potentially most plausible theory of all, with completely unreal twists. Part 3. Gloria Ramirez's deceased body poisoned almost an entire emergency department. See Part 1 for more of her backstory, but this is the final theory on how this medical mystery might have actually happened. Some are suggesting this may not have been her body at all, but rather a gas leak in the hospital. In fact, the hospital did have 2 confirmed toxic gas leaks in the previous 4 years. They believe the hospital may have been involved in covering this up, as the original coroner's report stated that it was not from natural causes. They then revoked that report, later saying it was simply from a cardiac dysrhythmia. Then it gets even more concerning, because one of the coroners and lead investigators in the case, Stephanie Albright, sadly committed suicide 1 month into the investigation. Her family believes the intense pressure from this case contributed to her death. Lastly, remember that strange yellow substance found in her blood? Yeah, that sample disappeared in all the mayhem, and now it can't be studied. I'm really not one that's into conspiracy theories, but this is just a lot of information to chalk up to mass hysteria. I'd be curious to know, what do you think happened?
Let's talk about what happened to 8-year-old Sandra Cantu. Sandra was born on March 8, 2001. She lived in Tracy, California with her mother, her grandparents, and her 3 siblings. She lived at the Orchard Estates mobile home park, and everyone in this community was very friendly. Sandra had a lot of friends in this neighborhood, and one of her closest friends lived only a couple of houses down. She was a 5-year-old little girl, and her great-grandpa was a pastor at the local church, so Sandra's mom never really had to worry about who she was hanging out with. On Friday, March 27, 2009, Sandra came home from school and decided to go play at a friend's house for a bit before dinner. Some time went by and Sandra came back home. She checked in with her mom and told her she was going to go back out to keep playing. A couple of hours went by since Sandra was last seen, but Maria wasn't too worried. Like I said, she knew all of Sandra's friends, she trusted the community, and she knew Sandra would be back before dinner time. However, when dinner time rolled around at 7 p.m., Sandra had still not come home. This is when Maria decided to call the Tracy Police Department and report her daughter as missing. She was last seen wearing a pink Hello Kitty shirt, black leggings, and Hannah Montana flip-flops. Police start canvassing the area and they ask the neighbors if they've seen Sandra or noticed anything suspicious, and one of them did. One of the neighbors, named Melissa Huckabee, who was actually the mother of Sandra's 5-year-old friend, texted Maria earlier that day and told her, "Tell the police I had something stolen at around 4 p.m. I don't know if that makes a difference or not." Now a little girl was missing and someone's suitcase had been stolen from their driveway. So police hear all this information and they believe that Sandra was most likely abducted. Police discover that the Cantu family does have surveillance cameras outside of their house pointing to the front yard. They check the surveillance camera and they spot Sandra. You can see Sandra leaving her friend's house and running and skipping back home. Just as she is about to get home, something to the right of her catches her attention and distracts her. Instead of continuing straight home, Sandra goes in the opposite direction. So police begin to compile a list of suspects, and at the top of the list is Sandra's father, Daniel. Daniel and Maria were going through a pretty rough divorce, so they thought this might be motive for him to abduct his daughter. However, they checked his alibi, they cleared him, and he was no longer a suspect. Police then talked to an ice cream man that people had seen around the neighborhood talking to children, and they also cleared him as a suspect. Then they spoke to a man that 2 years before Sandra's disappearance had kissed her on the lips in front of her family. I mean, what? This man kissed a little girl on the lips and nothing happened to him? I don't understand, but police spoke to him. He admitted that he was attracted to younger girls and that he playfully kissed Sandra on the lips. Police spoke to him and they ruled him out as a suspect. It wasn't until a candlelight vigil was held for Sandra when police received new information. Part 2 is up now. This is part 2 on what happened to 8-year-old Sandra Cantu. So at Sandra's vigil, Melissa, the neighbor that I mentioned earlier, comes up to police all distraught and she's freaking out. She said she found this note that said, Cantu locked in stolen suitcase, thrown in water on Bachetti Road and Whitehall Road. Witness. That's all it said. So police see this letter and they think it's strange. They don't understand why there's so many spelling errors and why did Melissa get this note. It was just very strange, and the fact that Melissa had told police that her suitcase had been stolen, they just thought it was weird, so they brought her in for questioning. A little bit of background on Melissa. She's a single mother to a 5-year-old girl that's really good friends with Sandra. Her grandpa was a pastor at the local church, and she was actually a Sunday teacher there. Now, she says the day Sandra disappeared, she was at the church decorating her classroom. Then she said she made a phone call at 4 p.m. to report her stolen suitcase. Police check her phone records and they confirm that she did make this phone call, but just because she made the phone call doesn't mean she wasn't involved. They obtain a search warrant to search Melissa's car, and inside they find a post-it note. On the post-it note were written words that had been scribbled out. When they sent this note in for testing, they determined that the words were Bachetti Road, Whitehall Road, and water. All the same words that were written on the note that Melissa had found and turned into police. Underneath her dresser, they found a notepad that had the same type of paper that was used for the note. When police found all these items, they determined that Melissa was the one that wrote the note, sent it to herself, and used it to insert herself into the investigation. But why would she do this? Well, before police could answer this, they received a phone call on April 6, 2009. This phone call came from a man named Jose Luis Franco that was an employee at an irrigation pond. He says he was draining the pond when he noticed a black suitcase. When they opened up the suitcase, inside was 8-year-old Sandra Cantu. She was still wearing the same clothes she had on the day she disappeared. I won't go into too many details about how she passed away because it is very brutal, but I will say she was essayed, she was drugged, and her cause of death was asphyxiation. A witness came forward and they placed Melissa at the pond the day Sandra disappeared. After this, police went to her classroom to search and they found a white string that had been cut and retied. This same string had been used to tie the suitcase. Then they found a rolling pin that had blood on it, which they believe this rolling pin was used to essay Sandra. Police confronted Melissa and she basically broke down and said it was all an accident. She said that Sandra had been playing at her house with her daughter, they were playing hide and seek, and Sandra decided to hide in the suitcase. Somehow Melissa forgot that Sandra was in the suitcase, so she packed it up, put it in her car, and drove to the church. When she got to the church, she unloaded the suitcase because she thought her school supplies was there, but when she opened it, she saw Sandra inside. She tried to give Sandra CPR, she even put a wet towel on her head, but Sandra was gone. Now, police don't really believe this is what happened, especially because the DNA came back from the rolling pin and the blood on it was Sandra's. Melissa had also previously been searching on how to kill a child, so they think that this was premeditated. Melissa was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
You ever see a grown man going door to door trying to sell candy? Whatever you do, do not open your door. This footage captured on a Ring doorbell shows a woman opening the door to buy candy from this masked man. After she hands the guy the money, you can see him move to the side as 3 armed men burst into the house. Noises and screams can be heard coming from inside the home as the candy man just casually strolls away. And just minutes later, the Ring doorbell captures the 3 masked men running away with a bag full of stolen belongings.
What really happened to Kate Yup? Kate Yup was a YouTuber and one of the biggest mukbang creators in the world. But if you're familiar with the story, you know there's some pretty dark twists to it. If you just go watch her videos, they seem fairly normal. Other than the fact that she doesn't show her eyes, she doesn't speak in any of the videos, and her profile pic is just a stock image. But none of that really means anything. It was in one of her videos that people started to notice she had busted up lips and bruises on her arms. The comments started flooding in asking her what was wrong. Then people started to say they could see people behind her and hear people whispering for her to eat faster. And in one specific video, she began tapping the side of a bowl with her fingers and people claimed it was Morse code for help. She even spelled out help as an acronym in the subtitles to one of her videos. So the theory was that she was kidnapped and being forced to make the videos. But all of these were just internet theories, until this missing person report was found. Like and follow for part 2. What really happened to Kate Yupp? Part 2. If you have not watched part 1, go watch that first. After the theories started to go wild on the internet, Kate Yupp responded. She pinned a comment on one of her videos claiming that it wasn't Morse code and people were being silly. But the comment was super weird. It was written in third person saying that she's not doing Morse code, she's not in any danger, she's okay. Which obviously led to the theories becoming more wild. People then started to theorize that Kate Yupp was actually an MMA fighter in Poland named Joanna. That would explain the bruises and cuts. However, this was quickly shot down because it just obviously was not true. That's when it was reported that Carly Gousset had gone missing. Based on the timing and the structure of her face, people started to assume that Kate Yupp was actually Carly Gousset being forced to make the videos. And the further you dig into it, the weirder it gets. Kate Yupp posted her final video in 2019 and has not been heard from since. So we really don't have an update on who Kate Yupp really is. However, I will say this. I don't think it was Carly Gousset, and I don't think she was an MMA fighter. Personally, I believe she was just a YouTuber, and when she realized everything that was being said, she rolled with it. She could have even been running a major social experiment, and if so, it turned out crazy. Guys, thank you for watching. Do not forget to like and follow.
This past week, 17-year-old Jimmy McGrath was stabbed to death at a high school house party in Shelton, Connecticut. Jimmy was the star lacrosse player at Fairfield College Preparatory School. He spent May 14th at a party on Lauren Glen Drive, where police were eventually called to tend to 4 stabbing victims. Reportedly around midnight, a black SUV pulled up to the house with students from a rivalry high school. A fight broke out amongst everyone, leaving 4 students bleeding out in the lawn. Tragically, Jimmy was stabbed in the heart and died in the hospital 20 minutes later. Witnesses at the party have since identified 16-year-old Raul Valle as the person responsible. He's been charged with murder and 3 counts of first-degree assault, but has since posted his $2 million bail and been released. The judge has set requirements for Raul's release, including GPS monitoring and 24/7 house arrest. We will see him in court on July 15th.